Hey readers, thanks for tuning in to Books in the Park. Today I'm going to talk about 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism by Ha-Joon Chang. Just finished it last night and I loved it. It was fantastic. It was pertinent to current events. It challenged me. It presented economics and economic theory in a way that was digestible for me, and also sort of took my understanding on certain things to kind of the next level. So first off, highly recommend, check it out. And let's dig into it a little bit more. So the title, 23 Things They Don't Tell You, is basically, sort of like the table of contents for the book. So it starts off with 23 chapters. Each one of those focused on one sort of misconception about capitalism and sort of the modern free trade movement since sort of the 1980s to present. And each one of those chapters will start off with a preconceived notion, and then a counter argument, and then get into sort of the evidence and examples throughout history that might, conflict with what the common preconception is. So for me, that setup was great because it forced me to acknowledge what I've already assumed about economics, forced me to encounter sort of the counterpoint, and then really kind of go through the historical facts. And I found that to be refreshing. I found it to be uncomfortable in certain situations, but throughout it really forced me to think about things, which is great. And I think any work of nonfiction should do that, or I guess any book should do that. But especially when it comes to like my own worldviews, it's good to be made to feel uncomfortable sometimes. So that's sort of like the background, the premise of it. Some just a couple of examples of what some of those chapters look like. There is one titled "No Such Thing as Free Markets." Government can pick the winners, and often do, and we lived in planned economies. So those were just a couple of the ones that I thought were really interesting. But like I said, there are 23, and as he moves along through each of the chapters, he references back to previous points made, and I think creates an underlying narrative that, hey, the way that we've been thinking about economy, wealth, prosperity since like the early 80s is not really working out, and just the idea that we should just completely move to a free market economy is not resulting in higher prosperity for everyone. So really interesting. I think that probably like my favorite thing about it is the examples that he goes through at each one of these things, because I think that I have a tendency to just have like a recency bias, I guess, if you will. I think about my own experiences, the experiences that have taken place in the last couple of years, and I think about the future. But it's really nice to be able to look back 30, 40, 50 years to see how things have changed, because one, I don't have personal experience with a lot of it, but also even some things you kind of forget. So and then I also enjoyed, after those 23 chapters, that he has a conclusion chapter that sort of puts forward 8 principles of how we can move past some of these preconceptions and create more strong economies in the world that are not just beneficial for the very rich, but also beneficial for emerging markets, for the poor, for the middle class, etc. So and also that portion, the conclusion portion, references back to the other chapters and sort of reminds you of the things that you've read for the previous couple hundred pages. So anyway, great setup. I think it's one of those. It's actually a book that you could read all the way through like I did and kind of find that narrative. But also, if there was just like a particular topic that you were interested in, you could go to chapter 16 and read about whatever chapter 16 is and feel fulfilled in that. And then also, it's actually kind of interesting in the beginning of the book, he said he has 7 ways to actually read the book. So if you think politics is a waste of time, read these chapters. If you've been wondering why your life does not seem to get better despite ever-rising income and ever-advancing technologies, read these chapters. So it's actually really interesting. It's one of those books that I read it fairly quickly. I sat down and read it from cover to cover, but it's not one that you have to. Also, something that was interesting is that it was written after the financial crisis, but it is very pertinent still today. And that's a good thing because you'll find value in the book. It's also in some ways a kind of a sad thing because a lot of these things have not been addressed or have not been, you know, really the thinking in our society hasn't really changed that much. But nonetheless, it is pertinent. I would love to hear him talk about these things now and, you know, give his perspective on how he would update this, had he had the last 15 years to you know, sort of rewrite the book. But nonetheless, great book. I look forward to getting into some of his other work. He has a presence on YouTube, so, you know, search his name and you can get a good taste for what he's all about. But for someone writing in sort of this genre of economics, I felt like it was approachable. I do think that there was, as I mentioned in my previous video, some situations where I had to do like a little bit of background research, but the language itself wasn't, the way that it's written is approachable, and I think that is a key thing for you know, for topics that are maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone. So all that said, 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism. Check it out. It's a good one. And thanks for tuning into the channel. I appreciate you. Happy reading.